Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and gentle viewers. Welcome to episode 46 of The Mayor and I, with me, Lindsay Khan, and the Right Honourable
The
Nick,
accused.
following our last podcast, the accused Nick Buckley, MBE, and this is a bi-weekly. I've probably got the wrong way around now. Twice weekly. Yeah, twice weekly.
Yeah, bi-weekly.
Bi-weekly podcast we do talking about current events that interest us both, mainly at the moment around the Labour Party and Keir Starmer, I hasten to add. Nick Buckley, MB.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to read something out first, and I'm not going to preface it by saying what it relates to, who it relates to, and I'm not going to end it by saying who it relates to either.
Are you going to do the accent? Are you going to do...
I don't know if I can do the accent, so I apologise. But there was a programme called The Fast Show, where there were two characters who ran a suit shop.
Yeah.
And they were basically just full of innuendo and euphemisms. And this is it. So, ooh, suits you, sir. Ooh, suits you, sir, sir. Ooh, does sir like it? A freebie, sir. We like a freebie, sir, especially down behind Waterloo. The glasses, suits you, sir. Do you like them, sir? The specs. And the moats. Can you see the beams, sir? And the football, sir. Do you like it too? Going up the Arsenal, sir. And the QPR and all, sir. And a penthouse, sir. Do you like it? A nice spread with a huge balcony. Ooh, suits you, sir. Does she like it, sir? Your lady, sir? Or is she a sir lady? Is she a swifty, sir? Or a quickie? Do you like a quickie, sir? Down behind Waterloo? Do you like to free the sausages? Do you, sir? Do you? Or do you like to be in control when you get into a state? Ooh, suits you, sir.
I used to like the fashion. I like the guy who'd come out the outside toilet and go, this week I've been mostly eating beans.
Yes. It was very, very funny. I think the problem is now shows like that wouldn't
You
get on
couldn't
it.
get away with
You
that,
couldn't
no.
get away with it.
And then the one with the same show with the character by Caroline Aherne, where she was a Spanish weather forecaster. Scotchio! Weather today, Scotchio!
It was
That's
always
racist now.
It was always Scorchio. Then every now and then there'd be a very small cloud, and she'd be like, she didn't know what to do when there was a cloud. We covered a lot last session, and we talked a lot about Labour, but there's lots of other things happening too. And I've talked before about our money and how our money is being, and our money, I mean our money as taxpayers is being spent. And there's quite a few stats this week that I've seen where we're spending money, all our money all the time. And I just thought I'd like to kind of go through a few of them with you, because you may not be aware of some of these. So HS2, now HS2 hasn't actually gone anywhere yet, as you can imagine. And they've actually reduced where it's going to go. So I think it's now just going to Birmingham, isn't it?
London to Birmingham.
London to Birmingham. So it's gone nowhere. They're still building it. Parts of London are just chaotic. It's not happened. Can you guess how much we've spent so far on it?
100 billion.
No, not quite.
Oh.
27 billion
Right.
we've spent so far. And nothing's happened yet. And as we've said before, there's 27 billion there. The little old ladies cost 1.5 billion a year to heat. So we could be heating them for the next 20 years, basically, with that money.
I think the whole HS2 originally was priced up at 12 billion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it's gone massively. I mean, I think it's well over 100 billion they're talking about now for the thing. But you're right, it was because so much time has passed with inflation and everything else. It's got, and what a waste of money that is, HS2. Because I'm sure you and I take the train to London. You know, we go on the train to London. It's 2 hours from Manchester. It's a fast train. I mean, less reliable than they used to be for some reason. But I think that's all to do with COVID and people being lazy.
Yeah. It's all to do with the train drivers wanting more money.
Yeah.
So they started refusing overtime and working extra shifts. That's what was grinding it all to a halt.
Right.
So that all should have stopped now.
Yeah.
Because they got 20% pay rise.
So this faster train will literally knock like 10 minutes off the journey. So it's pathetic that we're spending this much money on it. I want to talk about the World Health Organization. So guess how much we spend a year on that?
We probably give them a couple of billion a year.
No, not yet. No, we're giving 200 million a year at the moment. But it's expected to rise to $1 billion.
Right.
And the reason being is that we are now getting involved in a pandemic preparedness treaty. So because we enjoyed the last lockdown and pandemic so much, we are now investing hundreds of millions of pounds in the World Health Organization to ensure they can then tell us how to impose the next lockdown when it happens, because that's going to come soon, isn't it, basically? I mean, I actually think, are people going to go into lockdown if this happens again?
Not for a COVID type thing, no. People will have to see people dying on the street before a lot of people will take any notice again. They've actually damaged us because they cried wolf. So if a pandemic does hit us, which is serious, our initial response will be lax. We'll be going, I'm not locking down. I'm not locking down. Because they've cried wolf.
Yeah.
They've damaged us by doing the COVID in 2020.
Yeah. We'll talk about COVID in a minute. I want to go into the Ministry of Defence. So the armed forces are shrinking. I don't know if you're aware of this.
About 70,000 now, our standing army.
Yeah, less than a Man United crowd now. And part of the reason is they can't recruit enough people. So you've seen all the adverts on TV where women and all sorts of ethnic minorities are saying these are the people who need to join.
And that's why they can't recruit enough.
Yes.
Because the army used to be a man's man.
Yes.
Who'd want to join.
Yeah.
Over decades now, they've turned it pink and fluffy. So young boys for the testosterone now are going, not going there. So they've done it themselves.
Yes.
I almost joined the army.
Oh really?
Yeah.
What, recently or?
No. In my late teens, I was going to join under something called a short-term limited commission. I was going to spend a year in the army, go to university, and then promise 3 years back in the army. But I decided against all of it.
I can imagine you in a helmet carrying a gun, Nick, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
In fact, the picture springs to mind readily. So the MOD has 92 diversity groups in it. These are groups within the MOD working to ensure we have a diverse army, basically. Yeah. You made a very good point that the numbers are shrinking all the time, and one of the reasons they're shrinking is they are not trying to recruit young white men. They're trying to recruit everything. If they actually switch their advertising to young white men, they'd be fine. But I think you're right, young white men are no longer interested. But how much are we spending on those 92 diversity groups to try and encourage a very, very small... And of course you're going to get less people, because the minority by its very nature, there's not many of them, are there, basically? So,
and we also need to understand, do we need a smaller army? The next wars will not be mass people on the battlefield.
Yeah.
So... But we haven't got that information, we don't know.
Yeah.
Because no one's ever honest with us and we don't have these conversations.
But you need an army to handle the far-right thugs that are covering the country, basically. That's the main reason at the moment. Talking about expense and everything like that, British companies are now paying the highest electricity prices of anywhere, not just in Europe, in the developed world. Yeah. The cost of power for industrial businesses in this country has jumped to 124% in 5 years. And electricity is now 50% more expensive in the UK than in Germany or in France, and 4 times more expensive than the US.
And we wonder why we can't make anything.
Yeah.
Wonder why we can't sell anything. Wonder why we're going bankrupt.
Yeah.
It's because we keep hamstringing all our businesses.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you produce something at high quality, and Germany does as well, if Germany's got half the cost of energy, they can sell it cheaper than us.
Yeah. I mean, especially things that are very high intensity for energy costs as well, like steel businesses and things like that.
Which we don't have anymore,
We don't have anymore. And we discussed, didn't we, last week, I think, the fact that Tata Steel has just taken 500 million off the government and is opening a steel plant in India, basically. But yeah, Labour has said that, they're the party of industry and manufacturing, but they're not doing anything to encourage that in any way, are they?
None of our mainstream political parties are for manufacturing industry. None of them. just had 14 years of Tories. They did nothing.
Yeah.
They started this green agenda. It was Theresa May who wrote net zero into law. They're all as bad as each other.
Yeah.
They're killing us slowly with virtue signalling.
Yeah.
And every time we close one of our businesses down, that doesn't mean we don't need those products anymore. It just means we've got to buy it from a foreign country. And we give them the tax revenue.
Yeah.
We give them the jobs. And whatever's made abroad is either made to the same standard that we have or to a lesser standard. And then we've got to pay to ship it over. It's pure lunacy.
We are, and a lot of it is driven by this so-called green agenda. And I think we were talking about Lammy before. Lammy I think he said climate change is one of the biggest issues facing in the UN.
He said climate change is more serious than terrorism. That's what he said at the UN.
I mean, it's just imbecilic, this, isn't it? But as a result of that mentality and thought process, because Starmer should be saying, don't say stupid things like that to Lammy, but he won't, will he? He won't stop him from saying that.
They probably believe it. A lot of them believe this lunacy.
The CFD subsidies in August, and that's subsidies relating, this is basically funding things like wind power and all, wind turbines and all that. So in August alone, they were £237 million in 1 month. So we, the taxpayer, are subsidising in 1 month £250 million for wind turbines and all that jazz, basically.
It's 12% of your electricity bill.
All right,
is a green tax.
Is that the CFD thing? Is it?
Yeah, 12%.
Yeah.
So we could reduce all electricity bills across the country tomorrow.
Yeah.
If we cancelled the green levy.
Yeah.
12%.
I mean, it is kind of really sickening. And interestingly, there was Ed Miliband. He's now trying to spend. I don't know the numbers exactly, but I know one of the numbers. So he's got this net zero drive around landlords and rented accommodation. Yep. Apparently they've estimated the cost of converting all these houses to meet his agenda is 36 billion. That's what it's going to cost us, either as people who are landlords or consumers or whatever it might be, to try and meet these awful climate change targets. 36 billion, that's just for houses alone. God knows how much everything else is going to be costing us. The money that's been spent on this obsession with green is ridiculous. There was an interesting article on YouTube, and it showed two news reports, basically. One from 1983 and one from 2020. And the first article, which was on NBC News in America in 1983, said we had 7 to 10 years before climate catastrophe. This is 1983. The one in 2020 was Bernie Sanders, and he virtually word for word repeated exactly what the 1983 person had said. So this climate catastrophe stuff is not new. They've just been droning on about it now for decades. Almost half of a century they've been droning on about it. But we keep lapping it up, Nick.
We do. I think it was last year that the date, that little
Greta
Thunberg. So when she first hit the scene, she said something like, we've got 7 years to save the world, or something like that. I think she said to the UN. That date was last year. Well, we didn't save the world, did we? We're fine.
Yeah. And Al Gore, he was given a Nobel Prize in 2007. And at the Nobel Prize speech in 2007, he predicted by 2014 the Arctic, which is the northernmost ice mass, would be ice-free. Yeah. Basically, all the ice will have melted by 2014. And this is what he said when he was receiving his Nobel Prize, presumably for services to climate change, I'm guessing, was it?
Something like that.
This year, the Arctic, so we're in 2024 now, 10 years after 2014, it had 26% more sea ice than in 2012.
Yeah.
So, so we're seeing all these stats, Nick, and I guess the question is, when are people going to see, as we're now seeing with Labour, when are people going to see that this is just all a nonsense?
When it gets worse, because it's not got worse yet. So do you remember when everyone went on about climate warming?
Yes.
We stopped using that term, climate warming.
Global
warming.
Global warming, yeah.
We stopped using that phrase about 2000
Yeah.
because NASA data showed that the world wasn't heating up anymore. So then they called it climate change. And then climate change. And it's like, well, nothing's changing. Right? Climate emergency. And the reason why it's an emergency is because you can't see it. That's what makes it an emergency. And they keep changing the phraseology because nothing ever changes.
Yeah.
Now, we all want to live in a pollution-free world. Of course we do. We need to look after the planet. Of course we do. We need not to destroy the oceans and cut down all the forests. Of course. But there's a way of managing the planet which we're doing better and better every single year. There's more forests in the world now than ever before.
Yeah.
These are just ideologues. It doesn't matter what evidence you gave them. They know the end is nigh. There's always been people who've walked around with billboards saying the end is nigh.
Yeah.
And every religion has something like this. Armageddon, the end of days. There's a religious zeal about this, that the world's going to end and I'm going to be your saviour. I'm going to be Christ-like and I'm going to save the world. And these people have bought into their own narcissism and their own messiah complex.
I'd like to posit something different. I was just thinking as you were talking then that this is about leverage and power, but based on always an invisible enemy.
Faith.
Yeah, correct. And it's a really good point that. What is religion but faith in an invisible being? What was COVID? COVID was fear and chaos around an invisible enemy that they told us about. What is climate change? It is an invisible enemy that you can't see, Nick, but I'm telling you, this is coming.
Yeah.
Far-right thugs, they were an invisible enemy, weren't they? So it's this constant pushing of fear, an agenda of fear onto people based on something that nobody can see.
Because that's how you introduce tyranny.
Yeah.
Through fear and saying, I will protect you from this invisible whatever it is.
And if you think about it, the trans thing, that's invisible, isn't it? How do I know, looking into your head, that you think you're a woman? You're telling me, but I don't know, do I? Because it's invisible. There's no empirical evidence. Critical race theory. You're a racist because you're white, Nick, you're a racist. There's no evidence to show that.
Yeah.
It's an invisible thing that somebody's leveraging on to propel and promote fear, isn't it, basically? But I didn't actually think about it before, but you're right. When they started talking about climate change, you can't see it, by the way, it's invisible, but it's happening. You better be aware, basically.
There's no data.
No data.
Can't show you anything. Nothing's changed.
No.
But it's there.
Yeah.
A bit like the devil. That's what it is. It's the devil. It's a new version of the devil.
Yeah.
We can't prove it exists, but it's going to be bad for you unless you believe in me and I'm your saviour.
Yeah. The devil or God, isn't it? I mean, they're high priests, these people, aren't they? They're high priests of particular things.
Yes.
But there's no evidence. We have to believe them, basically. But I'd never really thought about it before. But yeah, all these things have one thing in common. They're invisible, basically. And they're just propelling fear onto us all the time. And COVID was that, wasn't it? Nobody could see COVID. You couldn't even see when people had COVID, could you? But they were telling us how bad it was all the time. But there was never any real evidence.
I don't know anyone who died.
No, I don't think I do either. I've heard of lots of people dying since. And I've met a lot of people who have had vaccine injuries. So I was mentioning those relatives of Anna's from Australia who came over last week. And I've got to be careful of his name here, but he was a golfer in Australia, loved golf, didn't want the COVID jab. But in Australia, they were far more draconian than they are here. He had to have the jab to play golf. Took the jab, knackered him.
Yeah.
His heart, basically. Within a couple of hours of having the COVID jab. So I know quite a lot of people who've got stories like that.
Yeah.
That is real. That is tangible. So Jordan Peterson, and you just mentioned this now, but he's now called climate science an appalling scam. has made the point that CO2 is at its lowest level for like 4,000 years at the moment. And if it goes any lower CO2, the plants will start dying. As a result of the slight increase, the planet, and you made the point, is 20% greener now than it was in the year 2000. That can't be bad, can it?
No.
Having loads of plants out there absorbing CO2.
If you go to Spain, and you've been to Spain, you've seen the polytunnels
Yes.
growing all our fruit and veg.
Yes.
They pump CO2 into the polytunnels because it increases the yield of the plants.
Of course. Yeah.
CO2 is plant food.
Yeah. Yeah.
The more CO2 we have, I mean, you can get too much, in which case it's bad for all of us. But as Jordan Peterson says, it's a cycle. All these are cycles.
Yeah.
At the moment, we're at the bottom of a CO2 cycle.
Yeah.
It's going to get more because we're at a cycle.
Yeah.
And the more we have of CO2, the greener the world will become.
Whenever people start droning on about CO2 to me, and I was at a board meeting actually about a year ago, and the lady there was an obsessive, we need to keep our CO2 levels down. And I said to her, do you know what the percentage of CO2 is in the atmosphere? And she said, 5%, 10%? I said, no.
0.2.
It's 0.4%. So these people who have this zeal for these things don't actually know the data.
They don't know science. They've been scared into believing something.
Yeah, yeah. And I said to her at the end, it was interesting, I may have said this before when we've been talking, I said to her at the end, and I took her through a whole load of stats basically, because I do know quite a few stats around CO2 and climate change and things like that. And I was telling her what percentage the UK contributes to the, because human beings only contribute something like 5% to the overall thing, and the UK contributes something like
1%.
Yeah, 1% of that 5%. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, so 95% is generated by the planet from plants and everything else. The rest,
volcanoes are big.
One volcano can completely distort the amount of CO2. It probably gives off more than the UK in a year. And I talked her through all this stuff, and at the end I said, "This isn't going to change your mind, is it?" She said, "No, it's not."
No.
So even though she didn't know any of the data, was quite shocked by what I told her. She was going to carry on with that insanity.
But you can understand why, and you can understand why because we're tribal creatures, and we're programmed to do as we're told by the tribal leader to keep us safe. So if the tribal leader or your parents who are tribal leaders in a much smaller tribe tell you, keep away from strange dogs, you don't go, well, no, because there's no evidence that dogs bite. You take it at face value, you build it into your psyche, keep away from strange dogs because you believe the people who've told you that. And that's what a lot of this is. They've been told by people they trust, meaning the government, scientists, it's the science.
Yeah.
We've heard all this before. And for them it's a win-win situation. There either is climate change, in which case I'm contributing to keeping it low and that will save me, or there is no climate change and I'm contributing to nothing and that won't harm me either.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win.
Yeah, I suppose it's like the idea, and I don't know who said it, it might have been Orson Welles or Gore Vidal. He said, I don't believe in God, but when I'm going to die, I'm going to pray to God, just in case.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like, you know, if there is a God and I convert on my deathbed, then I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And if there isn't, it doesn't matter anyway. You know, so it's kind of like, isn't it? The Washington Post, which is quite a left-wing paper, American newspaper, to try and prove a point, mapped out 500 million years of global temperatures to try and prove the points. And in fact, what they actually showed was, in the last 500 million years, the average temperature has been 36 degrees. In 2023, in the world, it was 14.98 degrees. So all they ended up showing was actually it's quite cold at the moment, and I think we're actually on the cusp. Either on the cusp of an ice age finishing or an ice age beginning at the moment, rather than...
We're still coming out of an ice age.
Yeah. So it's actually getting colder at the moment. It's been getting colder for the last 400 million years.
No.
There's a little blip. I'll send you. I don't know if I sent you the graph. So even the Washington Post, which is obviously left wing, couldn't actually argue about the actual, because it's very clear that temperatures have dropped. Just moving on to some kind of good news, I think, really, about electric vehicles. And I know you love an electric vehicle. Nick, I can see your electric Tesla parked outside as we speak. Electric vehicle explosions have risen in 1 year by, guess what percentage?
Double?
Yes, nearly. Well, 46% in 1 year.
But how much is that to do with people having more electric vehicles?
No, I think as a percentage it increased. Oh, sorry. Oh, no, you might be right. Maybe that's just more electric vehicles. Yeah. However, China, where there's quite a lot of electric vehicles, I think they're way ahead of us on electric vehicles, by the way.
They make them.
Yeah. In fact, I saw a company today in Scotland that potentially could be one of our customers that make electric trucks in Scotland. It's sponsored by the Scottish government. It look quite nice, actually. And my son, who's in America at the moment, he keeps sending pictures of the Tesla van, the new truck. There's a lot more of them over there than maybe we think there are in America than there are in the UK. So in China now, they're not allowing electric vehicles into underground car parks because there've been a number of explosions and fires. And of course, if it takes off in a underground car park, it's going to be absolute bloody chaos. So that's actually so you've got to be aware now, folks. If you buy an electric car, you might not be able to park in underground car parks or any kind of indoor car park. There's a Norwegian car ferry operator, I couldn't pronounce its name. They're now they've banned transportation of electric, hybrid and hydrogen vehicles. So you can't get on the ferry if you've got an electric vehicle, basically, which is really quite damning.
So these people, these aren't me and you making snap decisions. These will be people who've looked at the start.
These are serious.
Making financial future forecasts, and they're coming to these conclusions.
I think these are serious businesses who have serious insurers, by the way. Because don't forget, the insurers are the ones that will be looking at all this data. And I think their insurers are saying to them, well, you can let people park in your car park, mate, but we're not going to insure it.
Yeah.
And they're saying that, I think they've just said that to the ferry guys, we're not going to insure your boats if you've got electric vehicles on there, basically. So these are serious decisions made. And as always, I think we know, don't we, when business comes to play in these situations, they don't mess about. They don't care about what's woke or whatever. When you've got to make a profit, that's what you focus on.
If there's no government subsidies.
If there's no government subsidies. And it's an interesting point, isn't it, that 200 and odd million that's been pumped of our money that's been pumped every month into this country is what's keeping a lot of this crap afloat, isn't it?
It's distorting the markets. It's making them produce things we don't want because there is no feedback from the customer because we're being paid off the government anyway. Yeah.
Now, electric vehicle explosions have risen by 46% in 1 year. What do you think's happened to heat pump sales in Europe?
Oh, I've read somewhere that they've collapsed.
They've dropped by 47% in the first half of the year. So heat pumps, for those who are interested, and I'm sure hopefully nobody is, they kind of you stick them in the ground, and they extract heat from the. But if you think about it, if you ever plunge your finger into a hole in the ground in England, it's not that warm.
It's not, but the ground retains heat better than the air.
Yes.
So there is heat down there. But is it enough in winter to heat a home in the UK?
No.
I can't see how that
I have a good friend who's had his entire house converted into friendly, whatever it might be. He's got an electric car, all that jazz. And in the winter, he has to stick on extra heat, the gas central heating, because the heat pump doesn't heat the house properly. So and it costs a fortune for them to plug it in as well, basically, get it all. They have to dig out trenches and all sorts. It doesn't heat the house. It's quite cold there. I've been there in the winter, it's freezing, because... So that's why, because of course, people talk, don't they? And they, you go and see around to your neighbour's house, he might be saying it's fantastic. And you're sitting there freezing, it's not. So I think people become aware, so heat pump sales have plummeted as well. So it's kind of some quite good news, really. I think in terms of what's happening on the climate change thing. I think it's going to come. I think it's got to come to an end soon.
It will come to an end because we can't afford it.
Yeah.
That's what's going to kill it.
Yeah.
Because as a country, we're nearly bankrupt.
Yeah.
It's costing us jobs. It's costing us everything we can think of. That's what will end it.
Yeah. Moving on to, again, positive changes, I think. Well, actually, they're not that positive. One positive thing, I think you and I have talked about this, or certainly discussed it outside of these podcasts. Ireland are now not introducing hate speech laws. So I don't know if you're aware of that. I
just saw the headline, yeah.
I don't know what the background of that is, but I understand there's been quite a lot of lobbying, maybe from the Free Speech Union, I'm not quite sure who. But the hate speech laws, which I think they're trying to introduce here now, Ireland have rejected them basically.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's because of public opinion or whatever. But
it'll be public opinion. I mean, you look in Ireland now, there's demonstrations on the streets all the time.
Yeah.
About mass immigration and this and that. The Irish have had enough. It's turning, there's violence in Ireland now because of this.
Yeah.
The politician, the Prime Minister, I forgot his name now, strange name, Varadkar or something like that.
Is he still the Prime Minister?
No,
Leo Varadkar.
He got kicked out.
He got kicked out, yeah.
He got kicked out.
Yeah, but he was endorsing some sort of pedo type thing, wasn't he?
Well, he was just a woke idiot, just like the one in Canada and all those things. So he got kicked out. So these politicians in Ireland now are doing what all politicians do. Those things aren't popular anymore. They used to be popular. They're not now. So I'm quite willing to change my opinion if it makes me keep my seat or makes it more likely I'll be re-elected.
Yeah. And I think Conor McGregor has spoken about standing.
He says he's going to stand for Prime Minister, or President, whatever.
That would be fantastic.
I
would vote for him, definitely, anytime.
He's a nutcase.
He's an absolute nutcase. He's a dreadful actor. I don't know if you saw that film he was in.
He was a caricature.
He was just awful in that, but he's a fantastic character. He would be a brilliant president.
I'd like to see him win.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Just to put the fox among the chickens.
So that's a positive movement on hate speech. However, our friend Keir Starmer, who flew over to the United Nations, he was one of 193 countries over there, and they agreed a pact for the future. Are you aware of this pact for the future? 56 actions to tackle everything from, of course, climate change to a whole bunch of other stuff as well. And they've said, we will transform global governance. Again, it's this obsession with controlling us, isn't it? They've also agreed to a digital pact, basically, under the guise of preventing so-called hate speech. And basically, it's a list of words that may be considered offensive. So once again, we're in this territory of harmful but legal but not harmful. So they're still at it. It's not just our government trying to do it independently. The UN, 109, they get them all together, don't they?
Every leader's at it. Every leader has always been at it through the history of mankind. Leaders don't want to be criticised. Leaders don't want to be held accountable. And he's there talking to another whatever amount of leaders going, this internet's bad, isn't it? I keep being called this on Twitter. And they go, well, we're all here. Let's clamp down that as a world because it affects us. That's all this is. This is nothing new.
Yeah, but they don't. The thing that's annoying, Nick, is they're doing it to us at home here, arresting people for tweeting, all that sort of stuff. Then they fly over to the UN and sign another pact for a global governance where we can limit it even more, basically. They are just bastards, aren't they?
They are, but over the next couple of years, we'll have more and more people in that group who doesn't think like them.
Yeah.
At the moment, we've got the Argentinian guy.
Javier Milei.
Yeah, you've seen
He's
that.
Brilliant.
The right-wingers won the Austrian election the other day.
Yeah.
Marine Le Pen looks like she might win the presidential election in a couple of years' time. We've got the Dutch president, prime minister, whatever he is.
Giorgia Meloni.
Yeah, all these people, will start gaining more and more traction because there's more of them in the group, and we'll see how the world responds to that. If Trump wins, Trump's a big one.
I wonder if he is going to win that.
There's more and more people online who are not crazies going, it's not looking good. They're going. It's 50-50 this.
Yeah, I can't believe that.
Yeah,
I can't believe that Kamala Harris we're getting. There's no substance there, is there? But somehow people. But did I tell you that my son? I can't mention his name. Oh yeah, I can mention his name. Tom. He's touring America at the moment. He said, Dad, in the garden, he's gone sort of Boston, he's travelling across, I think he's just past Chicago now, but he said, Dad, in all the front gardens, there's Kamala posters, not Trump posters. Certainly on the East Coast, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you'd expect that on the East
Yeah.
Coast. Do you know anything that might be happening is you've got scared Trump supporters who don't want to talk about the voting for Trump. You've always had that. But the fact is up against a black woman. I can't say I'm supporting Trump. I'm going to vote for him, but I can't say
Oh,
that.
because you might be seen as racist.
Because he's up against not only just a woman, but a black woman.
Yeah.
That just might be enough to make people not tell the truth to pollsters and stuff like that.
I'm not sure she is black, though.
Well,
she's half Indian.
She's being portrayed, and Jamaican or something. She's being
No, I think her father is black, and I think her mother's an Indian.
Yeah.
I don't think that counts as black. I don't see what that counts as. You know my obsession with identity politics and getting everything right.
She's not white, and that's the most important
She's definitely not
thing.
white. Yeah. She's a brownish person.
Yeah.
She's a brownish woman.
Yeah.
Which is So you think because she's the first potential woman president, she's a little bit brown.
Yeah.
You can't be seen to say, I'm not voting for her.
I can see that being an issue for some people.
Yeah.
Who then will go out and vote for Trump.
Yeah. I think it's evens at the moment. I think they're pretty much neck and neck at the moment in terms of who's going to win. But I'm quite shocked because I thought, we knew Biden was going to get beaten, but I thought she would get beaten even quicker.
Yeah.
But so the UN, as we can see, are trying to clamp down on as well. But something was quite interesting. Counter-terrorism police. We talked about this before, but I didn't realise the stats were as dramatic as they are. So lots of children under 10 are now being reported to the counter-terrorism police. But more, and the fears are that they're being radicalised online. Whether that means looking at our podcast or not, Nick, I'm not sure. But 1 in 5 people in the past year arrested for terrorism-related offences were children aged under 18. Did you know that?
No.
That's quite a lot, 20%. 20%.
It is, but it's under 18. If you broke those figures down more, I would imagine the vast majority of them are 16, 17, 18. And if you're going to radicalise someone, you start early. You know.
But do you think are these going to be radicalised Muslims, do you think?
I would imagine it'll be the same percentage that it is overall. So if it's 90%, 90% of radical Muslims are being referred in, I would imagine it's 90% of children being referred in.
Yeah.
But again, we don't know, because the government don't like to give us all the information these days.
I just thought that was quite a staggeringly high number, but you're right, it's under 18, it's not under 10, is it? They said there were a lot being, but the number, this is 10% of people under 18.
Yeah.
Just moving it across to America, where my son is at the moment, there was some good news from America. Eric Adams, who's the incredibly woke mayor of New York,
Right.
and New York has basically collapsed
Yes.
under his tutelage. He's just been indicted on 5 criminal charges, including bribery and fraud. I don't know if you saw that news.
I did, but in America, all politicians are nearly always being indicted. It's become a political tool. So
but I'm surprised it's a political tool in the liberal East Coast. Who's going to be indicting him?
Well, it'll be someone on the right.
Yeah.
But they're indicting each other all the time, politicians.
Right. So you don't think it's that serious?
I don't. It could be perfectly true. He
Yeah.
might end up in jail. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just know that they're doing it all the time to each other and
Yeah.
threatening each other. They're
Yeah.
going to indict him.
I thought it was quite good news because he's ruined New York. Although saying that, my son said New York was really good. He enjoyed New York. There was an article in the Telegraph, and I don't know if you have a view or a position on this, by Zoe Strimple, and she said, she's written quite a detailed article and said progressives have destroyed the great cities in coastal America. Crime, shoplifting, drug taking and homeless have now consumed the once dynamic centres of the US. Do you think that's true?
I've been saying that for at least a decade. It's been slowly happening, and it's perfectly true. If you live there, you've seen it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's all about trying to be kind, because that's what these policies always aim to do, trying to be kind and not understanding the unintended consequences to these policies, such as let's not persecute broken people who are addicted on drugs. Let's not persecute them by arresting them for taking drugs openly. Well, That sounds fairly nice. But what did that lead to? That leads to everybody openly injecting drugs in your city centres because there's no deterrent anymore now. So you've got streets now that are just full of drug addicts. Let's not clamp down on people living in tents because it's not their fault they're homeless. So we don't do that. So what happens then? Big parts of your city centre turn into tent towns, and they're defecating in the streets and breaking into shops. All these policies that sound pink and fluffy all have negative consequences a little bit further down the line, and these cities are all dying. Crime's out of control. It's in some of these cities now. You can rob up to like $1,000 in a shop, and it's basically not an arrestable offence. Security guards won't touch anybody. This happens in this country. Won't touch someone because they're afraid of being arrested because it's assault. If you stop someone shoplifting in your assault and you put your hands on them, that's assault.
Yeah.
So you just watch them walk out with all the stuff.
Yeah.
And this then just encourages more people to do it. And these cities are dying. The downtowns in some of these cities are horrendous.
And one of the issues we know in America is immigration and how that's hitting. And we had the recent example of Haitians in a particular town called Springfield.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Springfield in New York or somewhere else. I'm not sure where it was. But basically came up during the debate, didn't it? And the rumours are, and I think it's actually been proved since then, that they're eating the cats and dogs in the people. And this is again an example of cultural changes and also different approaches and higher crime rates for quite a lot of these immigrant communities.
Yeah.
And that brings me on to, I want to talk a bit about immigration now, but I want to go to France first. Because I saw some stats which made me kind of realise why immigration is such a burning topic in France now. So France has been rocked by the murder of a 19-year-old student. I don't know if you've heard about this. I think she's called Philippine, this girl. And she was killed. This is really interesting, I think. She was killed, not interesting, she was killed obviously. She was killed by a 22-year-old Moroccan. And he'd entered France from Spain on a tourist visa. Now, he already had a criminal record, this guy. I think he'd already been done for rape or whatever. So he came into Spain from France. And again, in Europe, you travel where the hell you want. I'm sure you've travelled across borders in Europe yourself. Came into France from Spain. He almost immediately raped or attacked somebody. I think it was a rape again, and he was arrested and sentenced to 7 years in prison, basically. And then he was given what's called a deportation order. There's a French name for it, I can't remember, but it's a very typical French word, but it's a deportation order. Now, the deportation order is to deport him back to his country, which is Morocco, basically. But because it was a deportation order, and in order to be deported, you have to go to a remand centre or retention centre. There wasn't space in the retention centre, so he was released back onto the streets again. And this is why it's rocking France, because this guy was clearly a danger. He was a rapist, had a track record, but he was released onto the streets once the deportation order was given to him. And then there's been a report in France following this that estimates there are 700,000 people roaming the streets in France who have had these deportation orders served on them. So they've been in prison, they've been given a deportation order to send them because they're dangerous, basically, and then they've been released because they can't be put into a deportation centre effectively. And this because there's only 1,800 places in the retention centres. So there's 700,000 people roaming the streets, probably the major cities of France, with deportation orders served on them, presumably because they've committed some heinous crime, basically. And you then think, well, no wonder France is in chaos. And I think I told you about that friend of mine who went to Paris, and when he went to the restaurant, the door was locked because it's just kind of chaotic there. So I don't know if were you aware of those stats?
I wasn't aware of those stats. I was aware of the case. This is horrendous. This is another example of our elected politicians letting us down. How can you allow these people to... I mean, it's one thing he got into the country. Yeah.
You can kind of think that's possible given European borders.
You can accept that. But how is not deported? Who is a civil servant who signed his freedom papers not to be locked up, because I'd be looking at them, not their fault, but I'd be looking at them, and I'd be wanting to know who in government signed this off for this to happen, because at the moment I'm blaming you as a civil servant, but you're just doing as you're told. Which is the government department, which is the government politician who signed off that you catch and release them back into the wild? Because that's the politician we need to hold accountable. This poor woman is raped and murdered by a man who shouldn't be in the country, by a man who should have been deported when he was released out of jail. And our politicians are allowing us to be murdered on our own streets. And it seems that no one cares. It seems that nobody wants to do anything about it, because these criminals have rights, you know. I don't care about their rights. They have rights, but our rights should trump their rights. He should have been on a plane the next day. He should have been hung. He should have been hung for being a rapist in the first place. But we have the same problem in this country. We allow criminals their rights to supersede our right to be safe. And we don't have any politicians with a backbone who will stick up for the average person, who will stick up for that poor woman, raped and murdered, never should have happened. And yet we just go on like normal.
The thing is, they had him in prison.
Yeah.
They had him in prison and they let him out.
This reminds me of when you watch one of those African nature documentaries, and you see the herd of wildebeest and the lions are prowling, and all of a sudden the lions run after one and get it, and it spooks all the wildebeest, and then they all go, right, yeah, it's over now, and just carry on eating the grass, not realising another day it could be them. That is the meal for the lion.
That's interesting.
And that's what we are.
Yeah.
We're living in our countries because we've had most of our violence bred out of us and socially conditioned out of us. And we're just going along our lives, and every now and again one of these illegal lions turns up and picks one of us off, and we all go, oh, wasn't me. And next day we all go back to grazing on the grass again, and we just pray for these animals that we keep allowing into our countries.
That's a great metaphor, that is. I like that. I think that's right, isn't it? Yeah. I'm not sure I'm convinced that we've had the aggression or everything bred out of us, but I think we are far too tolerant of these things, basically.
And that's how it's been bred out of us.
Yeah. You know, and you're probably right, we're more like wildebeest than maybe like buffalo, because buffalo might turn around and have a go, the crowd, or elephants will turn around and assist the other elephants if they're attacked. But you're right, we all just run off in a direction, go, that's terrible, and then we're grazing again, aren't we? And then the next day out they come again, looking to pick somebody weak off the herd, don't they? Yeah, that's a really good, I like that. I like whether it's an analogy or a metaphor, I'm not sure. The politicians are trying to do something in the UK though, because Robert Jenrick, and I think as you said, why the hell didn't he say this when he was in charge? He said what we've discussed here many times before, that the crime being committed by migrants in Britain is being covered up, basically. Yes. The data, it is a far higher percentage per capita than any other elements of the population.
And this happened 100 days ago.
Yeah.
This happened for the 14 years he was in the Tory party government. The more he speaks, the more I despise him. The more he speaks, the more I despise him.
You are right to despise him for that, but at least one of them is saying it out loud.
Yeah, but he's not saying it for us. No. He's saying it because he's trying to win his internal election.
Yes.
That's why he's saying it. He's a coward.
Yeah, because that's two things he said now, isn't he? He said that, and he also said terrorists coming in on the boats. On the boats, but he is giving us a glimpse into the reality here, isn't he? He is giving us the veil is lifting here. Yeah. We now know that.
But not because he cares.
No.
And if he gets in power, the odds are he'll do nothing about it.
Yeah.
Because he only wanted to get into power.
Yeah. No, I can see you're angry about this. But
they're killing us.
Yes, they are killing us.
They're killing us and raping us and robbing us. And our government will not protect us.
Has been aware of this.
Yes.
And hasn't done anything about it. That's what's happening here. And I think you sent me an article which showed that I don't know where this, and on the basis they're hiding this data now, I'm not sure where this data, foreign doctors are revealed to be behind 60% of all sex assaults on patients.
Yes.
So they're not just, it's not just people coming over on boats wandering around looking slightly nuts who are doing it. We've actually got now our foreign doctors are actually more likely to assault us as a patient.
And same with malpractice in doctors.
Yes.
They're more likely to be a foreign doctor.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a reality amongst us now, isn't it? That this, you know, this migrant communities, immigrant communities are basically committing more crime than the indigenous population, the white population of this country. And I think we all kind of know it, don't we?
We have been on it for a long time.
Yeah.
The simple fact is, they're not good enough.
Yeah,
We know they're not good enough because we've seen their countries.
yeah,
If they were good enough and as good as us, they'd be living in a much better country.
yeah,
But they're not as good as us.
yeah.
Their culture's not as good. Their history's not as good. Their society's not as good. And we expect them to come over here and be like us.
But also culturally, I think it's interesting because yesterday, I think I was subjected to a racist event.
Right?
I think somebody might have thought I was white or European or something. So I was in Birmingham. I was having lunch in the centre of Birmingham, and I was going to go back to one of our businesses, which is in Wolverhampton. And I called an Uber. So an Uber turned up. There was an Asian guy in the Uber. Got in the car. It's about half an hour journey to this place, and he mumbled something to me, and I went. I just, you know, when somebody mumbles something, you don't understand it. You just go, yeah, you know. Next minute, he drove in the wrong direction and drove into a petrol station and started filling his car up.
Yeah.
And I was like,
On your time.
on my time. And I'm
But it's
like,
not your time because you've already had the price.
yeah, but it's based on the actual time that it takes and the distance. Yeah. So I was like, you know what I'm like. I was not. So it took ages. So I was knocking on the window. And I said, "What's going on?" I said, "I'm in a hurry here." He said, "Oh, yeah, I'm doing the best I can, mate." And that's when I kind of realised this guy's not thinking the same way as I'm thinking. Do you know what I mean? It was like an alien response. Yeah. I'm doing my best. And then he went and he spent ages filling up, doing all that. You know, when they're doing the lap, instead of just filling it up, you know. Then he went and paid for it and got himself a drink and a sandwich or whatever. And I'm like, he came back. I said, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "I'm in a rush here. It's totally inappropriate. This, you know, you're taking my time. I'm in a rush."
Customer service.
Yeah, you should have done this before. And I could see it wasn't computing with him, you know. And he said, "You did it. You agreed to it, mate." I said, I agree. Whatever I agreed to. It was after I got into the car, wasn't it? Yeah, it was after I got into the car. And then he said, really aggressively, he said, "Well, do you want to get out here then?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And I got out and just left the door open basically. And I reported him to Uber. But he was really offensive. But what was more disturbing for me, I mean, I didn't feel threatened, although I did say that he was aggressive. And he was only a little Indian bloke. But what I noticed, culturally, he didn't understand what he was doing wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
He just didn't get it. He didn't get how inappropriate it was, what he was doing. Even when I said to him, "What you did is totally inappropriate. You shouldn't do that," when, you know, sort of stuff. And I thought, you know, there's a gap here. And I'm not sure whether he was born in this country or whatever. I couldn't tell from his accent. He had an accent, but I didn't know whether it was one of those kind of funny kind of Birmingham stroke Asian accents that you have. So he had an accent. But the cultural gap there was massive between the way I think, and I think the way most European British people would think, and the way he was thinking. He didn't see anything wrong with what he was doing. You know what I mean?
It's a little bit like the Spanish mañana.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the rush?
Yeah, exactly.
What's the rush? Or in Jamaica, chill out, man.
Yeah.
What's the rush? I get you a drink when I get you a drink.
Yeah.
And that's not our culture.
That's not
our culture. Is money is time.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And we expect a good service.
Correct.
But you know, those people, none of those people in Jamaica, him or in Spain, do anything wrong. It's just
a massive cultural difference. So then, interestingly, I then called another Uber because I was stuck in there. I didn't know where the hell I was. So I called another Uber, and a really nice guy picked me up, really pleasant guy picked me up, and we drove. But because this idiot had driven me in the wrong direction, I was in a different part of. So normally to go from the centre of Birmingham to There's like a fairly, you can even go on the motorway, it's a fairly open route, but he'd taken me in the wrong, presumably to get cheap petrol.
I was going to say, he took you to the cheapest petrol station he knows.
Yeah, because he's an idiot, this guy. In fact, I said to him as I got out, you're an idiot. And as I say, I reported him to Uber. But so the second guy was really pleasant. Again, another Asian gentleman, but very pleasant. And we drove up this street, and I was like, where the hell are we now? And it was a busy street, main street. I'm not joking. You could have been in Islamabad. It was, every shop was an Indian shop. The streets were full of Indians, Muslims, or whatever. I was looking at that, and I've been to these places. I've been in India. I've been in Africa. I've driven down these streets before, so I know what they're like. I'm not, this is me being dramatic. I know it's like, but worse than that, Nick, it was filthy. There were bags of rubbish on the streets. There were old bits of furniture lying out. It's a busy main street. And I said to the driver, I was looking out the window, and the traffic was slow because it was then getting on for 5 o'clock. So the kids' traffic, 4:30. So the kids traffic was on the street. I said, where is this? He said, Handsworth. I said, Handsworth. I said, I didn't say anything to him because I didn't know whether he was from that area. But I'm not joking. It was horrendous. It just looked. It looked decayed, it looked broken down. And as you often see in India or in Africa, the infrastructure's gone. And it was like this. Anyway, so I saw this, and I wish I'd filmed it actually. I would have sent you a film of it. Because and there were literally bags of rubbish, split open bags of rubbish, round lampposts as you drove along. I've not seen anything like that ever since I've been abroad. I've not seen anything like it. Anyway, this is bizarre because there's a YouTuber called Paul Joseph Watson. I don't know if you've seen him. Yeah. He's really good actually. He's really interesting. And I was looking at the YouTube, and his came up, and he said Birmingham, a new hellhole basically, and he said Soho Street, Handsworth.
And that's where you were.
And that's where I was, and it's bizarre because that came out the same day, and he was showing films. Loads of people are going down there now, YouTubers, filming it, and there's things like human feces, there's drugs. It's just. I mean, you would be shocked, Nick, if you. I know you've seen some things in your time.
I've worked for the council. I've seen things like that. When you import the third world, you get the third world. All those things that are happening in that street are acceptable for those people where they came from. So, I work for Manchester Council. The amount of times we would clean up an alleyway, and within a week there'd be mattresses in it again, black bin bags. Crap everywhere, rats everywhere. You couldn't clean the alleyways quick enough because the people who lived there came from different cultures, different countries, and when they've got refuge, they just dump it because that's what they do in their country. Once they see the council clean it up, they go, oh, that's what you do. You dump it there, council cleans it up. These are just cultural differences that they have no idea. We then started trying to educate these streets, but because the turnover is so fast, no sooner do you educate these immigrants coming in that they've moved on somewhere else now, a different city, different street, new immigrants are coming, it starts all over again. The white British people living there end up moving out. It's like, I can't live like this. I can't live with the rats, the cockroaches, the crap everywhere. You put your bin bags outside, or you're waiting for the bin men to come up, and if your bin bags look nice as if it's closing them, your neighbours come out and rip them open to see what's in your bins in case there's anything they want. It's absolutely horrendous.
It almost looked to me as if the council had given up cleaning there. I don't know whether they have.
I would imagine they have. They just can't clean it quick enough.
I would recommend to our viewers watch that Paul Joseph Watson video because it is shocking. I genuinely, and it's bizarre that I would happen to be on that street. That it is, but I wouldn't have been on that street if it hadn't been for that idiotic driver. But I'm glad now because I saw that. Because sometimes you think, oh, things are exaggerated. There was no exaggeration. I was actually quite shocked, and it took me back to my travels in India, my travels in Africa. When you see stuff like that, But I think it's a really good point. You import the third world, you get the third world, don't you? And that's what's happening in those streets.
Because they're not like us, are they?
Yeah, no, they're not.
You can't import people from a failing culture, a failing country, think they get here, and suddenly they're Englishmen and women. They're not.
Yeah. So I suppose what you're saying in a way is there's no malice there.
No.
It's just, this is the way we live, and this is how we expect
Same
it
with
to
that
be.
taxi driver, no malice. He wasn't trying to rip you off.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is what we do. I need to fill up. If I don't fill up with you, it means I fill up after you, and I won't be near this cheap petrol station.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, what's the big deal?
I think that you make a really interesting point there. I don't think he just can compute why I was annoyed. That guy.
He just thinks you're moaning.
Yeah.
What's the big deal?
Yes. Some interesting crime stats. I don't think these relate to Handsworth, but you and I have talked about. The number of stabbings in the London boroughs, basically. Apparently, in the last 5 years, the number of crimes involving larger knives, swords, and zombie knives has doubled in the last 5 years. What is a zombie knife?
Do you remember the Rambo knife? Rambo.
Yes.
Remember a Rambo knife that is designed to look scary. I mean, the Rambo knife looks scary,
yeah.
But one that looks even scarier. Bits coming out. It's a fashion item.
Right.
It's not a practical knife. It'll kill you, but it's not a practical knife.
But it looks scary.
It's been designed to look scary as well as inflict damage.
Oh, I see. I didn't know that. Anyway, apparently the number of crimes involving those three knives has doubled in the last 5 years. These three weapons were involved in 15,000 crimes in 2023, compared to 7,000 in 2019. I mean, that's a lot, isn't it? 15,000 crimes with knives. And it makes sense because we went through those boroughs, didn't we?
That's not all knives. That's just those three types.
Just those three weapons, yeah. So therefore, there's presumably other knife issues going on. 10,000 of knife events involved machetes. Now, I don't know if that's part of those, whether that includes large knives or whether machetes is in a separate character. But I think what was more interesting, the presenter, is it Mike Graham?
Yes.
Yes, I think. Oh no, sorry. It's Mike Graham.
Graham at Talk TV.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he wrote an article about
his phone stolen.
About his phone. Did you hear about that?
Yes.
And he looked into it, and do you know how many mobile phones were stolen in London last year?
Thousands.
52,000. That's 1,000 a week.
Yeah.
Phone. I mean, that is. Why do we never hear these stats? I've never heard that before. That is a massive number.
Who's stealing them? Black men on bikes. That's
Right.
why you won't hear about it.
Right.
Because the optics are poor.
Yeah.
And where are all the phones going?
I don't know.
They go to China.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, and they're sent to China, and Chinese people buy them.
Are they reconditioned, are they,
Yes.
basically? Yeah.
Because they're blocked on European satellites, so you can never use. Once you report your phone stolen in Europe now, that phone can't be used again in Europe.
Right. Oh, I see.
So that's what we had a big.
Oh,
peak.
so if you nick a phone, you know you're going to get 20 quid for it, and it'll go to China.
Yes.
So it's worth probably 20 quid a pop every time or something.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah.
You'd think it'd be 20 quid.
And I think he said it was he didn't mention the guy's colour, but he said it was somebody on a bike.
Because there's
getting bassed. So he didn't have a chance to respond or whatever. Yeah. But that is massive, isn't it? There's a knife crime. There's the phone that's been stolen.
Again, the phones. I'll go back to the wildebeest lions.
Yeah.
These lions are patrolling the streets of London, waiting for someone to pull a phone out and it's snatched on you off.
Yeah.
They're just preying on us.
Yeah. But all that Sadiq Khan can focus on is ULEZ and a memorial for colonial victims of slavery.
Because if anyone who tries to tackle this will be called a racist, and nobody wants to be called a racist, so we'll allow black people to stab black people to death, and we'll allow young black men to steal our phones.
Have you ever heard Sadiq Khan talking about knife crime or mobile phone theft or anything like that?
Andy Burnham doesn't. Knife crime in Greater Manchester.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
No politician wants to talk about a problem they can't fix.
But I'm sure they could fix it, couldn't they?
It's very easy to fix if you had a backbone, but none of these people want to ruin a chance of becoming Prime Minister. Especially Andy Burnham, they don't be called racist. Sadiq Khan needs the black vote to stay in power. So, what did he do? they sacrifice citizens of the country on the altar of their career. As long as I'm not damaged, you people can be raped, robbed and murdered, as long as my career is not damaged.
Finally, for this episode, can we talk about your favourite things, which is the BBC and the press? It's interesting, The Guardian. So part of what do they call Keir Starmer now? I've got it written down.
2TK?
2-tier, no beer.
No beer.
Sharia Keir. There's a particular. We've got it written down. But anyway, of course, The Guardian. This part of what they also want to do is reduce glass sizes in pubs. Have you heard of this?
Yeah.
So this is insanity, isn't it? So this simplistic, this is sixth form politics again, isn't it? I know what. Let's reduce the sizes of glass in pubs and people will drink less.
Yeah.
They won't buy more smaller glasses. They'll just drink less, basically. But The Guardian has totally leapt on the bandwagon with this, telling its readers, a pint of beer is simply too big to comfortably enjoy by the time you reach the bottom. You're inevitably feeling sluggish and bloated. That is written by somebody who's never drunk a pint of beer in their life.
That's written by a weak, pathetic man. We've been drinking pints in this country for hundreds of years. A pint is the perfect amount of beer in the glass.
Yeah.
I hate it when I go abroad and you get a glass of beer.
Yeah.
It's like, that's gone. Got to
Yeah,
go
I
to the
know.
bar. I want to be able to drink half the drink in one go.
Yes.
And then sip. The second half of it, if women complain it's too big, well, yes, but you should be drinking halves anyway. That's why we have halves for the women, pints for the men.
Yeah.
I'm sick of weak, soy drinking, pathetic men telling real men what it is to be a man.
I can genuinely say, for probably the last 40 years since I've been drinking pints, I've never started on a pint of beer and felt sluggish and bloated by the bottom. If anything, it's
want
gone.
another one?
I want another one.
Yes.
And often my first pint when I'm out in the evening, it's gone before I even, and I'm like, oh, I need another pint. So that is, and I'm not a big drinker either.
Yeah.
But that is, but they are the basically media arm of the government. These people, aren't they, to write that crap? You know what I mean? So the government says, oh, we need smaller glasses, and the Guardian, some wimpy Guardian woke journalist who is vegan, says that basically.
He's basically saying, if I can't handle a pint, therefore all men can't handle a pint.
Yes.
Let's help all men by reducing the size of a pint. But the real question is, why aren't you man enough to finish a pint?
Yeah, exactly. That's what hopefully somebody put that in the comments. But again, it's attacking working men, isn't it?
It's also attacking our heritage, our tradition.
Yeah,
that's
the
what
point.
this is also doing as well.
Although I do like a schooner every now and then.
I hate schooners in this country for the main reason. The reason why you get a schooner in this country is because that beer is so expensive. They don't want to serve it in a pint because you go 10 quid. So they serve you 2/3 and still charge you 7 quid. And you go, prices, I'll have one of them for 7 quid. And then you get a schooner and I go, you've just ripped me off.
Yeah. Well, but the reason I tend to drink a schooner is not that I don't want a pint, but I always think, because if I'm driving, I think I've got to limit how much I'm drinking.
2 halves.
So I'll say, but a half is too small for me, whereas a schooner gives me the impression I'm not drinking as much, even though it's it's 2/3 of a pint, isn't it? So that means I can technically have 3 schooners before I can't drive. Although often, for the policeman who's watching, it often becomes 4 schooners. But I'm just saying, I try and limit myself.
Yeah.
In fact, if I just stuck to 2 pints at the very beginning, it would have been.
There we go.
It would have been.
And
fine.
you'd have felt like a man.
I'd have felt more like a man. So I must confess to our gentle viewers that I do drink schooners. We'll finish with some more media stuff. So the BBC pager attacks. Sorry, the BBC.
I was going to say, have they attacked ITV or something? What have they done?
No, they're too wimpish. They're too weak to attack anybody with pagers. So the Israeli pager attacks in Lebanon. The headline for the BBC said 14 killed, 450 injured by Israeli pager attacks. It didn't mention the fact that it was Hezbollah they had specifically targeted.
Talk about a targeted attack.
Yeah, that's a perfect attack, isn't it? I mean, I'm not celebrating deaths or injuries, but there's no collateral damage there because they're attacking Hezbollah.
I'm sure there might be collateral damage, as in 6-year-old daughter picks up the pager for the first time ever. So there might be collateral damage, but it's better than bombing a whole building to get the Hezbollah leader.
Yeah.
It's targeted. There's always collateral damage in war, but how people who are not Islamists can complain about this, I don't know.
Yeah.
You can't get any more targeted than that.
Yeah. I think the thing about that headline though, and I think I pointed out to you at the time, is they didn't mention in that headline at all that it was Hezbollah terrorists that they were targeting with the pages.
It should have said something like 14 Hezbollah terrorists killed, 300 injured.
Yeah.
Because we don't know all 300 who they were. But it should have said 14 Hezbollah terrorists killed. Because I think Hezbollah is a prescribed terrorist group in this country still.
It should have said that, and it should have said in precise targeted attack by Israeli forces, which is a perfect reason. Yeah. But they just hate Israel and Jews so much they can't do it, can they? They still can't do it. Two kind of more positive stories in the press. Fiona Bruce on Question Time, and Zia Yusuf, he's the Reform
chairman
of Reform, this young Indian guy.
Yeah.
He said something along the lines of that France and Germany are far more effective at returning immigrants to their country of origin. And Fiona Bruce interrupted him and said, that's incorrect actually, they're not more effective, Britain's more effective than that. So as always, shut him down, shut Reform down in that point. The end of the programme, and that's why I think things are shifting a bit now. I think the media is getting a little bit more switched on to what the public are thinking. She had to offer an apology because she was wrong, basically, and she actually gave on air an apology and said, "I apologise, I was wrong to say that," or whatever. What was interesting in that as well, Zia Yusuf said, "Oh, this is a typical BBC Question Time audience because they're all jeering him or whatever." And she said, "No, that's not true either. Can everybody put their hands up who's voted Reform?" Only 2 people put their hands up. So I think, and I don't watch, as you know, the BBC anymore, but that was quite a good story. And the final story, I think you'll like this one. And this is a positive story about the BBC. I know you're going to be shocked. So the BBC showed a drama series called 3 Girls, and it was about the grooming gangs
in Rochdale. Yeah.
As a result of this programme, so applaud it to the BBC, and it's not often...
Yeah, but that programme's like 10 years old.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, you've just destroyed you've stolen my thunder here.
Oh, sorry.
Because I was quite excited about this. As a result of that, a girl who'd watched it rang the police, and last week one of the grooming gang was jailed as a result. Good. I thought you'd like that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll end on that positive. Nick Buckley, MBE, very nice to see you, the Mayor and I.
Thank you much. Did you enjoy that video? I think you did. Come on now, hit that bell, subscribe, comment. Let's build this channel. I need more followers, I need more subscribers. Be part of the journey. See you soon.